The greatest problem that we have as a species, I believe, is our inability or deep reluctance to walk in someone else's shoes. In the video we watched about the Empathy Museum, someone said, empathy is the most difficult thing to provide. How many of you read or read this week the email notice about Sunday service that we usually send out Thursday or Friday? My question in that email, if someone could walk a mile in your shoes, what would you have them experience? Which mile of your life would you have them walk? I'm going to give you a chance to answer that, so you might want to think on it. If you want some paper, there it is. For me, I think it would be my childhood. I was an exception to the empathy shortage. Being small, I understood position. I was picked on by my older siblings, and there were 3 of them. It opened my eyes to how it felt. One Christmas, I remember, I asked for a pair of boxing gloves. Boy, was that a mistake. Talk about a gift that kept on giving back. I always had a natural inclination to side with the downtrodden, to feel sorry for losing a fight, even a bully. I was a Rodney King. Can we all get along? I would like for people to understand that children are people too. In fact, as we learn from Shel Silverstein, they are a mirror of old age selves. I used to wonder that I could be dismissed so often by adults, as though my thoughts and questions were unimportant, as though my feelings didn't matter. And so my question, which mile of your life would you have them walk? Someone left this book here. Radical Hope. Letters of Love and Dissent in Dangerous Times. Left it right here in this room. And so I took it home and read it. I was so moved by I was so moved by the very first story I read. It's a collection of edited stories that it inspired this service today. 3 days after the 2016 election, the editor wrote, I sat at my writing desk overwhelmed by grief. She thought about so many things and people who would be affected. She said, I thought about the journey ahead and wondered what we would do, what we could do, what we should do to get us through these times. With all of that in mind, she reached out to writers to ask them to join her in a unique idea, a collection of love letters in response to these shaky political times. I'm going to do something unusual this morning. I'm going to read to you that open love letter and then invite you to reflect on a letter you might write. Meredith Russo, The Most Important Act of Resistance, an open letter to her 2-year-old son. Darwin, I expect you won't read this until you are much older. You're only 2 now, a beautiful toddler who I am told looks just like me. Whether this is an insult or a compliment will be up to you, I suppose. When you do read this and realize how many people have already read it, you might be embarrassed at the things your mother has shared. Or you might be proud. Again, time will have to tell, because I certainly can't. I remember when I thought I could predict what the future held, but now, at the end of the year 2016, or 5776 in the faith of your birth, As hate rises like a tide around the world, that thought seems like arrogance, and it has been replaced with fear. I am familiar with fear. I felt it the night you were conceived, when I took my first dose of hormone therapy, my first step to aligning my body with my mind. I realized I might never have another shot at a child of my own and decided to give you one chance to show me you were meant to be. I felt it when you were born. Fear, she's saying. And I held your tiny, fragile body and thought of what life might have in store for you. I feel it for you every day when I read about synagogues burned and defaced all over America, about Jews demeaned, about people saying you should be taken from me because being raised by someone like me is abuse. I feel fear when I look in your eyes and see only trust and love. We face an oncoming storm, my sweet child, a thunderhead that gives pause even to those accustomed to oppression, indignity, and brutality. And I am not ashamed to admit I am more afraid than ever. I pray that it ends soon, that sanity prevails and we run our course before too many of history's mistakes are repeated. But people are imperfect, and I have never So I must grapple with the reality that you will in all likelihood grow up in the rain, the shadow, the thunder. You will become an adult in a world tainted with fear, and for that I am sorry. Listen to me when I tell you what fear is capable of. It can keep you safe, and it can mangle your soul. Your countrymen let the power twist their fear until they believed that women like me and Jews like you and people of color and Muslims and immigrants were threats and barely human beings at all. I know this from experience as well. When I was young, I feared my body's inevitable betrayal as it tried to turn me into a man. I feared shame and ridicule. Feared abandonment by friends and family, feared bullying, and feared the threats of violence, degradation, and rape that I knew came with life as a woman. I let my fear turn me into a person I look back on with shame, a young man who alienated friends, resented peers, insulted family, lashed out at others before they could strike first, and acted tone deaf to the needs of others. That I was already beaten and mocked for seeming gay when I was young was the proof I needed that I was right. I wasted 26 years on lonely, terrible, bitter fear. I tried killing myself to escape it, but since that didn't work, I faced it. I became the woman I had always needed to be, or rather, ceased pretending to be a man. And you know what? My fears all came true. It was too late to undo what years of testosterone had done. It became almost impossible to find work. I lost family members and strained relations with others. Total strangers went out of their way to vomit hate into my various inboxes. I was beaten, I was catcalled, and yes, I was sexually assaulted. But despite what my fear had insisted, none of it, not even that last bit, was the end of the world. In fact, quite the opposite. Since transitioning, I have grown closer with the family that matters than I ever was before. I have snagged the job of my dreams. I have strengthened the friendships I already had and formed new ones I could not have imagined before. I have danced and loved in a body that felt closer to whole than I thought possible. I have helped women and girls like me. And most important of all, I have received the honor of being your mother. Had I let fear continue to mutilate me, none of this would have happened. And you alone are worth everything I have endured. Always remember that there are things in your life worth enduring infinite agony for. And that it is in the best interest of the hateful to keep them from you through fear. You are the Jewish child of a queer transgender woman. You have queerness in your genes to the extent that it might be genetic. Life would have been hard for you before these clouds formed, but now, well, I had hoped to hand you a kinder, gentler world than the one I grew up in, one where the suffering and shame I endured in my youth would seem like a relic of history. But my hope was misplaced. Nationalism, racism, xenophobia, homophobia, misogyny, anti-Semitism are in their ascendancy, and they will not recede again without raking their claws through the world as they go. We will be targets. We will. Horrifying, especially as a parent. Every moment our fear over us is a moment those who hate have stolen from us, and we must give them nothing. Look at my life whenever you doubt it. Look at yourself and remember that I would not have you if I had given in. I will protect you as much as I can for as long as I can, but as you grow into yourself, as you finally read this, promise me, please, that you will set your fear aside and devote yourself to a full, honest life. That, my child, is the first and most important act of resistance any of us can undertake. Love, Mare. The editor of this book, Carolina de Robertis, said, I arranged these letters into 3 parts. Roots that explore our histories with letters written often to ancestors. Branches address the present times and people around us. And seeds look to the future generations. What would your open letter say? To whom? Someone in your past or future? Maybe even to yourself. If I wrote an open letter to the past, I think I would address my parents. If I could have them walk a mile in my shoes, I would have them understand my childhood. I would walk in their shoes, know what they endured. And that's another question you might ask. Whose shoes would you walk in? Not necessarily someone you admire and want to be like. Anyone. It could be someone that you don't understand. Or I would maybe write a letter to my childhood self, reminding me what Meredith said to Darwin, what I came to learn the hard way, what we always learn the hard way. There are things in your life worth enduring agony for. I believe Emerson was writing a letter to the future, a letter to us, when he wrote, "Is it so bad then to be misunderstood? Pythagoras was misunderstood, and Socrates, and Jesus, and Luther, and Copernicus, and Galileo, and Newton, and every pure and wise spirit that ever took flesh. To be great is to be misunderstood. So it is, and so may it be. Amen."